Welcome to Marketplace in Action.
Giving you hope for your calling and purposes.
Breaking down the Word to uncover the promises that God has for your life.
Building your faith, for those promises are for you. Good evening,
Hello.
and welcome to Marketplace in Action. I'm your host, as always, Dr. Ken. With me is Pastor Anthony. And tonight we want to talk about, we want to share a little something that's dear to my heart that just happened to me today. Just like you folks out there, in this season I'm working a job, as you know, in the past. I've been a millionaire twice. I've owned my own business most of my life. And in this season, I'm working for somebody, but boy, have I really learned some valuable, godly lessons. And tonight I want to share one. It's called Imagination with Pastor Anthony. He'll join in with us and give us his feedback and expert commentary. So tonight, if you got a pencil, please grab it, and let's start immediately. Just like all of us, we're struggling with finances. Let's start with this. God puts us in charge of your life or our life and gives you responsibility and authority to create your life the way you want. Well, it's really according to his will, because that's really better for us. It's more favorable when we are in his will, because he knows what's best for us. Remember, in Genesis 1:26 and 1:28, you can look at that, and Psalms 8 is where I got this from. We always want to quote the word, so we know the word divides right from wrong. So we know God wanted, when he made creation, he wanted people to love him on our own free will. So tonight I want to show how imagination is stronger than our will itself, or even reasoning. And I'll prove that tonight scripturally with Pastor. If we're currently experiencing financial troubles, and we are, and I just was going through this last week working for somebody, we tend to always be short on our finances. And upcoming programs, Pastor and I will share prayers, how to increase your paycheck, how to believe for your bills being paid on time, and so on. And we'll share that in upcoming events. So when you continue to the financial problems until it change your mental image. So what we need to do, instead of think or talk about or picture financial lack, our mind will produce what we're thinking. So remember, as a man thinketh, so is he. And I'll say that a few more times tonight. It's Proverbs 23:7. So if we change the images in our mind to prosperous thoughts and speak prosperous words, we should have it. So God even says, poverty and shame shall be to him that refuses instruction. That's Proverbs 13:18. I mean, think about that. Shame, notice, and poverty go together. Now, I can relate to that because I was at a hard place the last couple of weeks, no money in my pocket, waiting for the next check and really stressing. I really felt ashamed. So that verse really spoke to me. So let's move on. Did you notice that as God was talking there, poverty and shame are together? See, he wants to get the shame off you. And that's part of a curse, is poverty. So when we stop thinking negative thoughts, when we renew our minds through his word, in fact, it says in Romans, if you are taking notes, write this down, Romans 12:2, it states, instead of change the way you think, when you will always be able to determine what God really wants. So imagine, the imagination is a power in your mind, which some consider to have almost a magical creative power. Of course, it's not magical, it's God-given. But we should be involved with, it'll work for us every day as we choose to use it. It's a daily process. So even in the classic book, you folks probably read this before, Think and Grow Rich, Richard Napoleon stated, Napoleon Hill stated, in the mind you can conceive and believe you can achieve. So the study on the mind might show that a man can create anything that he can imagine, everything from a paper clip to a space station. It starts with an imagination in somebody's mind, right? Modern science has confirmed that mental images held in a person's mind does actually create the conditions and experience that a person's life and affairs, even Albert Einstein, everybody knows who that is, the famous physicist, he agreed that man's limitation is only in the negative use of his imagination. So I'm going to bring Pastor in here. First step, we need to set our limitations in our mind before we experience limitations in our life. So imagination is stronger than willpower. And let's get into that. So Pastor, I'll just give you a little feedback and you tell me what your commentary. The French psychologist said in his early 1900s, the popular principle based on positive self-talk, we all heard this, we think it's all brand new. Nothing, Ecclesiastes says there's nothing new under the sun. This is all being redone. But that's what we need, different ministers, different speakers, different teachers, different men of God or women of God to prove it's a different way how you approach it. And I believe the scriptures have 1,000 different meanings at least.
Right.
Now, why do I say that, you might ask? I know there's 1,054 different interpretations of the Bible. So on that alone, that could be a possible fact. Yeah. Perhaps you've heard of a pastor or a motivational speaker encourage people regularly saying, you know, day by day, I'm getting better and better. That's from that French doctor in the 1900s. Unlike common belief, that a strong will constitutes the best path of success. Now, because it's proven that imagination is much stronger than sure willpower, that when we imagine, the will is a conflict. Remember, the willpower and the imagination will conflict, and it never fails. Imagination always wins. And I'll prove it to you real quick, and I'll bring Pastor in. For example, a child, remember this? When we were children, we always imagined there was a monster under our bed. I mean, how many of us really did that? I mean, I know I did. But in the middle of the night, just by his sheer will, eventually we fall asleep. Eventually we think, no, there's not one. We try to convince ourselves, but it never fails. Imagination always wins out, and we seek safety. Remember what we used to do is we threw the covers over our head? That was imaginations that we were comforted, we were hidden, we were in a secret place. So sometimes, just on that alone, the safety that's only being found by sticking his head under the covers, and this demonstrates the imagination is stronger than will. Now, and let me throw a little scripture in here, and Pastor, help me here. Sarah, and I'll prove it to you, and remember in Genesis 18:12, remember Sarah and Abraham, they were conceiving a child, and they thought they were laughing because they were too old. Well, you know, she laughed at God when he says, you're going to have a child. Well, the point is, he promised, the promise of God, because of her logic, reject that mental picture of her having a baby. Now watch this. If she would have thought, focused, viewed, and repeat, view, focus on the imagination, it would have no choice but to obey what she was thinking about. And I know this. That's why she had the child. As we study and apply the law of visioning, that success and prosperity determines to see our prosperity. We don't hypnotize ourselves. I'm not talking about hypnotism here, but I'm talking about how we unprogram ourselves or unhypnotize ourselves because of the programs we watched, the people we're around, the culture we're with, the things we see in magazines. It's all a point of failure. So that's why it's so important, these superstitions, these limited beliefs over centuries, that's how poverty sneaks in. And when you say, Pastor, in your generation, I know it's a negative generation, and a lot of people are on the internet, and whatever is a fad on the internet, that's what seems to be the thought of the young people now. Is that?
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's interesting talking about imagination, and you know, because this became popular probably in our culture, in American culture at least, maybe in the 70s,
Absolutely.
with kind of this whole new age movement coming in. You have the Zig Ziglars and the, you know, the whatever, I forget all their names, but they come in and visualize the thing, powers to success.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, the power of the mind, you know. So this is, we've seen this in our culture in kind of the pagan, secular way. Now, what is the difference between that and what we're talking about here? That's what's interesting to me. Because if you look up the word imagination in the Bible, if you do like a concordance, most of the references in the Bible about imagination are negative. It's kind of like the people's imagination has gotten
That's
wild
good.
with them,
That's
and
good.
they've gone away from what, you know, what I had created them to be. But something that's really, really interesting about all of it is, so you have these new age people that are having these get rich, you know, quick schemes and you know, better improve your life and betterment and, you know, the power of positive thinking. And they talk about this, but what does the Bible say about it? Because we're talked about, you know, I think of what Jesus said, and let the poor say, let the weak say I am strong.
Yes.
Let the poor say I am rich.
That's right.
So let's think about that. If you have a poor person, someone who's poor, and they're walking around saying, I'm rich. Now, either they're crazy, because you could look at them and
That's
say,
good.
you're not rich. You know, obviously, you're poor. You don't stop pretending you're rich. But what is that? What is making them rich? Is it money? Is it what other? We find out that it's funny. I have a lot of people I know, Dr. Ken, and they make way more money than I do. A lot of them get, you know, between $3,000 and $5,000 just from the government, just for handouts. They don't work, they don't do anything. They get the disabilities, they get the whatever it is, and they're making $5,000 a month, but yet they feel like they're just poor. They feel that they're helpless. They feel that they're poor victims. And I'm like, $5,000 a month, there's a ton of people that if they had that kind of money, they would feel like kings.
Yes.
They would feel they could clear all their debt, they could live in a better place, feed their
Absolutely.
family. I mean,
Yes.
that's good money. So what's the problem here? I've realized, Dr. Ken, that money can never fix poverty.
That's right.
Poverty can never be solved by money, because it's not money that's the cause of the poverty. Jesus had it right. He said it's a poverty of the spirit.
That's right.
That is what is in their heart. And so that doesn't matter if you have Lamborghinis and millions of dollars. If you're waking up feeling like you have no purpose, then you are going to feel poor.
That's right.
You are going to feel deprived. You're going to feel your spirit is going to be suffering. But there's people out there that have nothing. They sleep out in the woods. They eat what they can catch, but yet they feel like the richest, most content person in the world. So a lot of this has to do with what we're talking about. What does our mind say about the situation? Is our mind just being influenced by all the things around us, the voices that say you're poor, you're good for nothing, you're lazy, you're doing nothing, you know, all these negative things? Does our mind just run with that? You know, and we'll start thinking of, oh, I'm nothing, I'm terrible, I'm a waste of space, I'm just a consumer and a container, and you start to feel really, really negative, and your whole life spirals. But if we have the promises that God has spoke to us, the ones that He's left us in His Bible, the ones that we always talk about on this show, if we wake up saying, God has made me for a purpose, God has made me for a plan, I have a mission today. There are lost souls out there. There are people that don't know God. If you wake up with that mentality, and if that mindset, say, put your mind on the things of God, if you wake up with that, then you will start to take control of your day. You will start to take control of your life, and everything else seems to just fall in place. Money isn't the issue. It's the poverty of the spirit.
It's funny that you say, you're right on point, Pastor, because my next thought would be reasoning power may tell you what you desire, but it'll never happen because it doesn't matter. The imagination is greater than reason.
Right.
Spot on.
Right, exactly.
It seems unreasonable to think that man would ever be able to fly, right? Or to talk onto a substance that you hold up to your ear and it's wireless and you're across the world. I mean, think about it. Somewhere, somehow, we were granted experience, our daily imagination, something that seems so unreasonable, so impossible, but yet somebody somewhere thought about it and expected it. Now, we have to be careful because whatever we expect and we build it up, it'll produce in our mind, whether it be good or bad. And I want to talk about that. Joseph here in the Bible, remember Joseph? His brothers sold him into slavery. Remember that? He dreamt about imaging, imagine himself with authority, domination, wealth, and influence. Haven't we all? But he really, that was his focus. And it seemed that he had none. So success was always, we have to create it mentally first. So unlike Joseph, sometimes we have to be careful, because sometimes when we are excited about our dreams or our focus or what we believe God is telling us, we start telling others, and they start speaking into us a nightmare of grandeur, of fear and doubt, criticism and negativity. So again, since we're going to pass the time anyway, here's just the thought. We have nothing to lose, everything to gain, if we just start thinking about what we're really created for, what we really want. I mean, after our mind becomes fully convinced that God wants us to prosper, and you come to a prosperity thought-liking atmosphere in your mind, it's like breaking a hard shell, but suddenly success will start to begin. And it'll happen so fast, sometimes it'll be hard to keep up with, but regardless how long, keep dreaming in details of success. So sometimes our eyes are fixed on what is seen, but it is what that's not seen, the unseen, which is temporary, which is the unseen, is eternal. So fix our eyes, meaning to stay focused on what we're considering and desiring. I think that's extremely powerful.
That's powerful.
Now watch this. By using, and I'll prove another point, Napoleon Bonaparte, the dictator in France in the 1800s, 1700s, became victorious in a visible realm before the soldiers ever drew a sword, in the physical realm. How? Historians talked about it. He had such a detailed dictation of order and length of how they're going to march, the meaning of the places the armies were going to meet, how they would attack. That he even had in his notes the blunders that he expected the enemies to make several months before it even happened. Now, this is a distance of 700 miles away. So Napoleon used his imagination and the power of visioning to conquer most of the known world. Can we use the same formula to conquer our world? Stay with me, I got something really important to say. Imagine we can turn the current thoughts and expectations, and we can't do it if we're thinking of despair. We have to think of hope. We can't go from failure to success. We have to stop thinking discouragement, but encouragement. The picture we see determines the difference between success and failure. The more you deliberately purposely use your imagination power, the more your mind is powerfully working before you on the right purpose and calling God has for you. If you feed your imagination with just half-hearted, lukewarm, contradictory mental images, that's the kind of results you're going to have. But I know this, God says, and this is where it's important, get your pens out again. God says that double-minded men, a person of two opinions, should not even think he will receive anything from the Lord. That's James 1, 6, and 8. The reason God commanded us to cast down negative thoughts and unscriptural reasoning and harmful mental pictures, that's in 2 Corinthians 10:5. Now, to strip those negative things of their power to produce something detrimental in our life, we have to be very careful. We can't think anything negative, because that will happen too. So God is clearly telling us negative thoughts can materialize too if we don't interrupt them. So we have to get busy, slow your mind down, quietly imagine in detail the hope you have. The true man really imagine what he has. That's Proverbs 23:7. I mentioned that. Now I'm going to close with this. The Bible uses the word imagination. The creative power of unity in imagining is so great that it came down and confounded. This is what happened in Genesis, that God came down and confounded their languages in order to break the limitless power of their agreement and potential of their accomplishment. Now watch this. God himself saw, and I'll give you the example, I'll show you where it is. It says Behold, God saying, behold, they have one language. This is the only beginning of what they can do, and now nothing they can imagine they can do that's impossible for them. And that's in Genesis 11:6. You can look it up in the Amplified. Now, anticipation, the payoff, I'll give you another example. Moses, with his eyes on the imagination, in other words, he looked at the one that we can't see, which is God, and he kept right on going. Hebrews 11:26. Now, the Bible tells us that we are not to look at the things that are not to be seen, because the things that are seen are temporary, just like I talked about, subject to change. But we are to look at the things that are not seen, which is God, and he has promised us that the things and desires, because the things are internal. 2 Corinthians 4:18. Now remember, this is how David got by. This is my last thought. David imagined that Goliath would be easy to kill, just as he imagined the lion and the bear that he killed earlier. It's in 1 Samuel 17:37 through 58. And of course, he did. Now, could it be possible to declare the end from the beginning? That's what God did. And he called those things in as though they weren't. He couldn't visualize it if he wasn't speaking it. And you can find that in Isaiah 46:10, Romans 4:17. So even the Lord himself visualized what he needed to do. So what I'm asking you to do is this. I'm asking you to get your scriptures out. And if you're struggling through finances, if you're struggling through health, if you're struggling through relationships, whatever it is, job opportunities, whatever it is, I want you to get the scriptures. You can write to us, to Pastor and I, and we'll give you our email address, and ask us maybe some of the scriptures that you might not be familiar where you're at or whatever, but let us help you and stand and believe with you. But I'm telling you right now, if you'll do the 30-day test and start speaking these scriptures out and standing on what you're visualizing, and be detailed. Like today, I was believing for money just to get back and forth to the office. I was believing money to buy lunch. And I visualized it all weekend, and the money came that day. I'm telling you, this really does work. What Pastor and I do, everything that we talk about is already proven and tested. We've experienced it. We've gone out and done it. If you haven't done it, you can't teach it. So I'm just trying to encourage you folks tonight. If there's anything that you're lacking, or anything that you're not sure of, or whatever it is, I want you to see yourself in a more positive way. Right. If you feel like you're getting too old, picture yourself younger with vigor and strength. Because it says, and speaking of age, it's in Joshua 14:10, it said Caleb conquered age. He was the strength of a 45-year-old when he was 85. So even that, there's an answer in the Bible for everything. So I'm asking you, get into that word, get in a Bible base, and get people that are familiar with the Lord. Instead of talking to other people, remember that I was telling you about in Genesis 11, how God had to come down and mix up their languages, because they were all one in agreement. That's a powerful tool. Get in agreement with your spouse, your kids, your neighbor, your church members, your pastor, whatever it is. But if you get in agreement, that's when things start turning around and help. Help us out. What do you want to close with?
Well, yeah, the email for us to contact, you could check marketplaceinaction.org, or also you could write to us at write2marketplace@gmail.com. That's WRITETO marketplace@gmail.com. So,
let me say one word. This is what Pastor and I stand for. It's Proverbs 31:8.
Oh, yeah.
We speak for the people who cannot speak for themselves. We protect the rights of all who are helpless. That's the vision God gave us. So until next time, we'll be here May 6th at 4:30 as always. I'm asking you to get into that word. If you have any questions, like Pastor said, email us. But we're here for you. We're not only here for you, but if you have any questions, or if you're here locally in the LA area, you want us to come out and talk to you or visit with you or speak at your groups, we'll be happy to come out. But my whole vision of Marketplace in Action is for the people that can't speak for themselves. So I know this, the word of God never comes back void, Isaiah 55:11. And in closing, I want to say this one quick prayer for you. And we always try to leave with a prophecy. It says in Isaiah 42:9, everything we prophesy will come true. And now we'll prophesy again. We'll tell you the future before it happens. And I'm telling you this by the Spirit. Everybody out there, listen to me. Job 22:28, you will succeed in whatever you choose to do. Light will shine on your road ahead. Verse 29, people will be in trouble you'll say, help them, and God will save them. Why? Verse 30, even the sinners will be rescued because your hands are pure. So until next time, keep the faith and keep imagining those God-giving thoughts of what your purpose and calling is, and you watch the turnaround. It happened to me in a weekend. What can it do for you? Until next time, God bless you all. Good night.